Hi, this is Swadhin Bharti, and welcome to another episode of TFI Insights. And today we have with us once again Madhura Maskasky, co-founder and VP of product at Platform9. If you look at all these years, how Platform9 has evolved, what is your focus today?
If you go back to the core fundamentals of why we started Platform9, are the two things that we've been passionate about are first, we were convinced that open source is going to be the predominant way in which infrastructure software is going to get consumed. And second, we were also very passionate about the delivery model for open source software, and specifically using software as a service or SaaS managed or SaaS based delivery model for allowing enterprises to manage their private or hybrid cloud deployments. And we've stayed true to these two tenets throughout our journey as Platform9. And then, we said that what we want to do is we want to pick the most popular open source frameworks that have a wide community and an extensive adoption, and we want to take them and deploy through a unique SaaS managed model because we think that model will fundamentally address some of the big challenges that are inherently true to deployment of any open source framework around ease of deployment, management, upgrade, patching, etc., while allowing our customers to leverage the power of these frameworks using their infrastructure anywhere in the world. Right. So the way we've evolved is that since 2016, when we met, in addition to OpenStack, which was our first open source framework that we deployed and supported for our customers using the SaaS managed model, since then we've added at least one more framework, which is Kubernetes, which is the de facto framework today for management of containers, at scale across distributed environments. And then we've extended our portfolio of tooling that goes in conjunction with OpenStack and Kubernetes that better allows our end customers to manage this infrastructure, monitor it, etc. So to be specific, and we'll get into more details, but in addition to managed OpenStack and managed Kubernetes today, we also support managed bare metal, which, and we'll talk about that in a bit, especially in edge server edge use case scenarios adds a ton of value for our customers. And we've added managed Prometheus along with Grafana for monitoring all of your infrastructure.
How would you define edge computing?
Typically, when we hear about edge, I think there's at least two patterns that people talk about. The thin edge that you mentioned, which includes IoT devices and embedded devices, and there tends to be a much larger footprint of these devices. You can think of your phone or other smart appliances as examples of these thin edge devices. And then there's thick edge, which is also called server edge sometimes, which includes physical servers, x86 or AMD hardware that are racked and stacked at a specific remote location, where the number of servers is relatively small compared to what you would deploy in a large data center. So you will typically have between 1 to 3 servers, but that capacity is sufficient to satisfy the requirements for that specific edge location. And so when we talk about edge, we as Platform9 are focused primarily on the thick edge use case or the server edge use case. The IoT edge is outside of our scope, at least today. And it's because when we look at our customer base, which is enterprise, mid to large size enterprise customers, we really see the evolution from having your infrastructure in a set of probably tens of data centers, which are relatively large and have a lot of capacity, and then some public clouds, which is typically how the enterprise infrastructure deployments have been configured so far. We see the natural extension to that, or natural progression, to be the server edge, where in addition to having these central data centers and public cloud presence, enterprises are having to also deploy infrastructure at tens of or thousands of thousands to tens of thousands of locations spread across the world of where they need to deploy these micro data centers, and they need to also manage them globally. And so that's the specific use case we're focused on.
We are going through this crisis of COVID-19, which has created kind of unique challenges. You cannot send your engineers to the location. At the same time, most of the people are working remotely. You're no longer in your a corporate firewall. Hardware procurement can be a big issue as well. So people have started kind of rethinking how they build and manage their infrastructure. Have you seen any such trend, or in the once we are through this crisis, what do you think would the new norm look like?
We think about that a lot, and we've been thinking about this problem for a while, but especially with COVID and the dynamics in the post-pandemic or during this pandemic-based world that we're seeing. They're evolving in a direction, like you said, Swapnil, which is focused on a lot more software-based automation with a lot less to none involvement of manual personnel that's required in doing anything with your infrastructure outside of racking and stacking it in a data center or a location, which at least till today must happen through some physical personnel being present, right? And it's because companies can no longer afford the luxury of being able to send someone on a short notice to a certain remote location to address issues with their hardware or software installed there. And so, if you think about these two patterns, on one end, because of the introduction of 5G and just more digitization across the world, the need for locating your software or your business applications closer to your end user is increasing, and is going to continue to increase, and hence the need for the server edge deployment pattern that we spoke about. So that pattern, I think, if anything, is just started, and we see it exploding across at least few verticals: retail, technology, telco, but we think it's going to expand beyond that across many other verticals. So on one end, we are seeing this pattern. And then on the other end, because of COVID, in a post-COVID world, there's going to be increasing emphasis on reducing the manual personnel involved in deploying this technology. So what that lends us to is a world where infrastructure as a code, or complete automation of deployment of all aspects of your software, not just the Kubernetes Kubernetes framework that you deploy on your infrastructure, but everything that goes under Kubernetes, including your operating system or any hardware level modules, etc. Achieving complete automation of deployment of all of these components and then management of their lifecycle is become paramount, right, of absolute importance. And that's really been the sweet spot of Platform9 for a while. When we started, we came out with this unique SaaS management paradigm for infrastructure anywhere, because we believed that the world would evolve to a point where complete automation of infrastructure would be a P0 requirement that enterprises would not be able to sustain and survive in a cost-efficient way without that. And I think that we are in that world today. Right. So if you take an example of Starbucks is one of our customers, for them to automate their tens of thousands of stores across the world, where they have these server edge or thick edge deployments in each of the store, with about few servers, etc., in each store location, they cannot afford to send manual personnel there to configure and tweak those deployments, because that just becomes cost prohibitive and almost impossible in today's world. So what they're doing with us is achieving that 100% automation, including the bare metal stack, then virtualization, and all the way to Kubernetes. So that's kind of the pattern we see evolving, and we're very excited about what kind of role we could play in this new dynamic.
Talking about your role, and also talking about back in 2016, Kubernetes itself has come along with the use cases that we were talking about back in those years. Those were advanced users who wanted to try out new technologies. But today, as you were also mentioning, everybody is kind of using Kubernetes. There are a lot of legit cases, and there are a lot of cases where they just want to try because everybody else is using it, so why not use it? So what does it mean from Platform9? what kind of change you have seen from use case point of view? Because that also means that the problem that we were solving back in early days are totally different from the problem that you're trying to solve today.
In the early days of Kubernetes, as is true with an earlier phase and life cycle of any new technology, the challenges there were around customers understanding the core tenets of Kubernetes. I remember we spent a lot of time talking about what the core principles in Kubernetes, the notions of pods and deployments and services and ingress controllers and all of that means. So there was a lot of time spent on education, and a lot of other companies in the ecosystem have also done a fantastic job doing that, likes of Red Hat and Rancher and others. But the earlier days were a lot around educating customers on how do you convert your currently virtualized applications to containers in Kubernetes, and how do you understand and make sense of the complexity involved around Kubernetes. I think today, to a large extent, the vocabulary of Kubernetes terminologies has become a pretty commonplace vocabulary, right? But the world as a whole, at least the DevOps and enterprise IT world has become very familiar with that terminology. So us as vendors, we no longer need to spend as much time teaching them about it. The challenges really are around managing the complexity of Kubernetes. So as more enterprises have started to move or have been successful at moving at least a chunk of their business apps to run on Kubernetes, they are really understanding the difficulty around running Kubernetes at scale and managing it. And we ourselves fit in that bucket. We are biggest users of what we provide to our customers. So we run all of our SaaS hosted components of our infrastructure using Kubernetes, and we ourselves feel that complexity on a daily basis. And from our perspective, if we experience it, then it is almost 100% likely that our customers go through the similar pains. So today, it's more about how do you apply the right patterns of software development in the context of Kubernetes to get your applications configured along with the right tooling for monitoring and log aggregation, etc., to make it easy for your admins and your developers to maintain the life cycle of your containerized apps.
If you look at this whole cloud native space, it's kind of exploding. New technology coming in. There are new use cases, which also mean there is a lot of scope for new job opportunity, new career opportunity. You yourself founded a company. But at the same time, we are also seeing a lot of consolidation happening. It happens with every industry. VMware is acquiring a lot of companies. IBM is acquiring a lot of companies. SUSE is acquiring Rancher Labs. So, first of all, what do you think where we are right now in this cloud native space, where we are still seeing a lot of explosion, new companies are coming in at the same time, we are seeing a lot of consolidation. So, how much room it leaves for young budding entrepreneurs to start a new company? Is it the right time? If yes, what is your advice?
I think the consolidation that's happening in the space was expected, and it's typically what you would see when a new paradigm shift happens, which is what happened with containers once, but more importantly, once Kubernetes got introduced. So over the past 3 or 4 years, we saw that explosion in the Kubernetes space happening. And when that happens, a lot of new companies get started to enable customers in the context of that market opportunity. And then you will see a portion of them being acquired as that as that space starts maturing. And we saw that with OpenStack as well. There's a number of companies that were around when we started that then since got acquired. And a similar thing is happening in the Kubernetes space. I think it's an important thing, and it helps the market achieve a level of stability where customers or users are not inundated or confused by way too many players in the market, but they're able to focus on 3 or 4 options and really compare their pros and cons and understand what's unique about each and choose the right one. So we think that's absolutely necessary and a good thing. In terms of starting a new company at any point, I think there is always massive opportunity, right? Regardless of the timeline when you start. I think the most important thing for someone starting a company in this space or even outside is you got to be clear about what that long-term goal is for you. Like, what is that light at the end of the tunnel? what is the key problem that you're looking to solve that you think needs to be solved, for the world to get in a better place. For us, it has always been giving enterprises or customers the freedom of utilizing infrastructure anywhere in the world, not just restricted to public cloud data centers, but anywhere, and doing that through a SaaS management plane. So from our perspective, Kubernetes is one of the tools that lets us do that, but it's not everything. And I think when you have that end goal, that destination clear, that's really the most exciting time for you as a technologist or a group of technologists to start a company. And then you also find the ability to survive regardless of the other dynamics in the market, because your end problem statement is still not solved and you are charging a path towards solving it incrementally. So that, in my mind, ends up being the most important factor. And there is thousands of problems to be solved and new opportunities created every single day, right? So I think this is as exciting a time as any.
Can you talk about the release cadence of Platform 9 platform? At the same time, can you talk about what are the latest features or highlights of the latest release?
We recently made a PR announcement around some of our new capabilities that were added in managed Kubernetes over the past 3 months or so. Things that we're extremely excited about. One of the key feature enhancements that we did to managed Kubernetes is we added managed Calico to it. And Calico, has become one of the popular CNIs in the Kubernetes ecosystem, as the software-defined networking equivalent for managing your container infrastructure. And what we saw with our enterprise customers is that there's been a tremendous amount of interest in using Calico. However, the open source version of Calico does not come with a well-defined API that one could use programmatically to again work towards that infrastructure as a code end-to-end automation goal that we think is important for enterprises, right? So what we did is we layered a layer of API on top of the open source Calico framework, so that any users of Platform 9 or even free tier users, because we also have a completely freemium tier of Platform 9 managed Kubernetes now that anyone could go to our website and try out. Any of these users can experience using Calico through the Calico CLI and API that we've exposed, and it also allows us to extend the same managed benefits that we provide for managed bare metal or OpenStack or Kubernetes to Calico as well. So we completely own and manage the lifecycle of Calico deployment. We monitor it, we update it, upgrade it, and we have an API that users can use to automate their networking configuration, deployment, and updates. And our user interface gets to utilize that API as well. So that's one of the biggest enhancements we made that our enterprise customers are very excited about. The other one was support for CSI, along with built-in support for VMware and Pure Storage as one of the CSI, the set of CSI initial drivers that we've validated and tested through. But there's a list of additional drivers that we continue to test. Kubernetes 117 support, we typically stay one version behind the latest Kubernetes version. So 118 has been out now, and so Platform 9 is at 117 support. What's coming up next, what we haven't released quite yet, is being able to run multiple versions of Kubernetes within your PMK environment. So different clusters running on different versions is something we're about to release very soon. And so we're pretty excited about that. And then lastly, being able to perform backup and recovery operations with your etcd clusters. So those are some of the key capabilities announced. One more I should mention, which also got announced, is extension to our observability portfolio, where we have a lot of visibility into the UI around your Prometheus alarms and metrics and rules that are created, with the ability to configure those rules to better receive alerts. So this is, again, some work we've done to provide a better user experience on top of Prometheus, which is a very powerful tool for monitoring of Kubernetes infrastructure. So that's kind of a quick summary of the capabilities. Again, we're very excited about what's come out and what's going to come out in the next 3 months.
Madhura, thank you so much for taking your time out and talking to me today. And this space, a lot of work is going on, and Platform 9 is doing a lot of work. So I look forward to talk to you again at some point. Thank you.